Hello and welcome. I'm Rose Solari, poet, fiction writer, currently now a book reviewer again, and co founder of Squire Publishing, a small press with big ideas. I started this little series last Wednesday, and I'm going to keep it going for all of National Poetry Month and beyond. So I'll be here on my Facebook page every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time in the US to share some poetry, some prose, talk about how we're going to get through this hard time with the help of each other and our writing communities and our artistic communities and everyone who is struggling so much right now, and to kind of remind us that we're all in this together and that art's going to help us. Before I get to the poets and the poems that I'm featuring today, I wanted to give a couple of shout outs to artists in different genres. First of all, I think we all know how important music is in our lives, and I'm sure we're all listening to a lot of music these days to help us get through. The music world has suffered some horrible losses from this virus. Just most recently, in the last 24 hours, John Prine and Hal Wilner, real tragedies. And so I think it's an important time to remember and honor the musicians who are still with us and who are still bringing us important and very soul nurturing work. So I want to tell you about a guy named Willy Porter, who you may or may not have heard of. Willy spelled with a Y. You can go to his website, willyporter.com, and check out his music. Extraordinary singer, songwriter, a virtuoso guitarist, jaw-droppingly great, and also one of the world's truly greatest guys, one of the nicest, kindest, most open-hearted people I've ever met. Willy's doing a series called Concerts from the Bunker. You can find them on his website. This past Sunday night, he read a couple of my poems in his hour-long, amazing concert. So I want to thank Willy for that. Thank you, Willy. And check him out. You won't regret it. Another wonderful book I read recently, not poetry, but a terrific novel that I think a lot of you would be interested, is If the Ice Had Held by Wendy J. Fox. Wendy is a gorgeous writer, deeply lyrical, so insightful. And she is published by Santa Fe Writers Project, which is kind of our sister press. They've been in business 10 years longer than we have, and we've learned a lot from them, and we love working with them and their publisher, Andrew Gifford. I strongly recommend that you check out sfwp.com for a full list of their books, and perhaps check out Wendy's wonderful, wonderful novel. It's about generations of women. It's about being a mother, being a daughter. It's about identity. It's about connection. It's just a gorgeous book. So check it out when you have a chance. Now, today's poets are Linda Watanabe McFerrin and Grace Cavalieri. They were the last two of three poets included in what we call at ASP our Legacy series. When Jimmy and I were doing our research to start the press, we discovered that many small press publishers are also terrific writers across multiple genres and astonishingly managed to produce their own work while also nurturing literally hundreds, if not thousands, of other writers into print. So we started our Legacy series to honor those writers. We started it with the Richard Peabody Reader, which I'll be reading from next week. But this week I'm going to talk about our two most recent Legacy collections and those authors, Linda Watanabe McFerrin and Grace Cavalieri. Linda Watanabe McFerrin, this is the book, Navigating the Divide, Selected Poetry and Prose. Linda is a travel writer, poet, fiction writer, essayist, teacher of international conferences, publisher, co-publisher with Joanna Bigger of the Wandering series of travel anthologies, and has, through the organization she founded, Left Coast Writers, 40 years ago, nurtured hundreds of writers into print and taught thousands. To meet Linda's students and to hear them talk about her is to know that she's got a special magic in the classroom as well as on the page. And we were really thrilled when we pitched this idea to her, and she said she'd love to do a legacy book with us. So I'm going to read a couple of Linda's poems today. I was looking in particular this week for poetry that I thought might offer us some hope to get through this time, or at least some insight. Linda often takes a rather philosophical view, an almost Zen-like view of trouble and tragedy in the world and how to handle it. how to confront avarice, how to confront tremendous loss. And she does it with a really magical sense of imagination, I think, and a beautiful ear. She's a very musical writer. This poem is called Relics. The peevish merchant with her long red nails counts coup, counts santos, piles them on the altar of accomplishments, but not enough to satisfy her big-handed hunger. She wears a ring from Hong Kong, city of merchants. She wants your pretty face, your peace. To get, she sells, tight-fisted. Her monkey grip is palmless. She tastes abacus beads in everything. Dreams she is standing on the fat man's shoulders. Brown sparrow, why do you return to her windowsill? She doesn't see you. Why do you sing for her, too? I love that poem. I think it has a marvelous sense of the larger world around us that doesn't judge. The birds sing for everybody, good and bad, and they do it every day. And I don't know if you've noticed, but with the decrease in traffic, we hear them ever better these days. And boy, has that been a balm of late. Linda is Japanese American, and she has extensive experience in kabuki theater and culture through her family. I deeply admire this very powerful poem from her book called Legacy. Interestingly enough, given it's from a Legacy series book, it's in numbered sections like acts of a play. And it walks you through utter tragedy and pulls you through the window of it to get to somewhere else. It's also a poem about our ancestors, what we inherit, what we give up, what we keep. Legacy 1. In the first act, remember her madness? Her wide gash of sorrow, her obi of blood? The tragic kabuki heroine, she committed seppuku, hid the cross cut under mulberry robes. We walked like obakes, like unsettled ghosts. She cut my long hair. It frightened her. It stole the first scene of the play. She made me wear clogs. She plucked out my eyebrows so that people would mistake me for the moon. In the second act, she unwound her obi of blood and wrapped it around me, tied my wrists and ankles. Not even my weeping could wipe it away, could bring her back from the realm of the dead, where she's wandered as long as I've known her. She said we should all have died at once. We should lie in a common grave. In the third act, she made and unmade me, told me again of her deep, bitter wound, said, "This is your legacy, daughter. Let the anger boil up inside you. Let the red pour from your ears and your eyes." She drained me of color and sutured my heart. I rang like a bell. Sorrow, sorrow. In the fourth act, the psychiatrist entered. I thanked him and gave him black stones. I added them to the scales on his desk. I discovered that none of his patients survived. Look, I said, I'm better. He said, let's pretend. Epilogue. In the epilogue, I am walking along a seashore. I'm pretending that beauty can reach me. I've thrown out the kimonos, the costumes, and ashes. I've made a new self out of flowers and surgical steel. A shiny new self that blooms every spring. And I've cast all the ancestors back over the sea like pearls. They are pain. They are sand. What a poem, huh? I just got a message from somebody that the broadcast has stopped, but I'm going to go ahead like it hasn't and figure it out later. So thank you for your patience. I hope you can still see me. Linda has survived an extraordinary amount of tragedy in her life, including the death of a daughter who died only a few days after she was born. And I think some of the strength in Linda's work comes from her intense gift of imagination, because imagination, I think, is part of how we survive. She gets through the challenges in her life with the use of that phenomenal imagination of hers, and with her sense of connection to the past and to ancestors that is sometimes supportive and sometimes needs to be abandoned and replaced with new things. Grace Cavalieri, Poet Laureate of Maryland, playwright, fellow of many awards, host of The Poet and the Poem, which has run for over 40 years, a radio show where she weekly interviews poets. This is her legacy series book, Other Voices, Other Lives. Grace is an expert at survival, I think, particularly in her own life as well as in her writing life. She's published over 20 books of poems. She has over 26 produced plays. She was a Navy wife for many years and survived those years of worry, wondering when every time her pilot husband got on a plane if he'd come back alive. She has a real gift for living and for giving to others. And when she teaches, when she writes, when she speaks, it all shines through. I'd like to read a couple of poems of Grace's today. I had the honor of editing this beautiful collection of her poems, interviews, and excerpts from her plays. I'm going to start with a poem that combines both real experience and imagination, and it's a love poem. It just stopped again. Is everybody there? Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm not sure why this is happening, folks. I'm so sorry. The video is playing with me today. Oops. It just did it again. Okay. Advice regarding a field of reindeer in the snow. If your husband is sleeping, you can leave him a message and go in the airplane with the mysterious pilot, just for an hour, to land in strange cities, farmlands, perhaps with wet leaves and wooden houses with ruffled curtains. You may walk to the edge of what you thought was a forest and look through a thick wall of ice with a gigantic hole and see field after field of reindeer brushed with snow, standing still. How beautiful, like frozen statues, cold and silent and staring straight at you. Line after line of them, a sight you'd never have seen had you stayed home. You'll never forget it, but remember to leave a note before you go, or your return will be bleak. It will ruin everything. Trip, field, reindeer, snow. I was just informed by a live message from a friend that someone has decided to play a drinking game with this broadcast and take a shot of something every time the video stops. That may be the best way for you to get through this, folks. Sorry about it. I may try to re-record it later, but for now I'm going to keep going. Just one more poem. This poem is called Senior Prom, and it is in that wonderful form called a list poem that some of you may be familiar with. And again, it's a love poem. It has an epigraph from Kierkegaard, perhaps unusual in a love poem, that says life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Senior Prom. Before the return of innocence at the end, before I asked how can I go on without you? Before everything cost more than $3. Before my recipe for dilled carrot. Before I bought them Easter dresses but kept dreaming I forgot. Before running laps around the dining room table. Before saying, where does everything go? Before a crystal of feeling broke open which will not close. Before my children came spilling out from a wound which will not heal. Before I found I was the past. Before the lung disease set in. Before my dead grandfather appeared 40 years later, pale and white, to give me life. One night I wore a gown of blue and white, in layers and layers, pale blue under pure white. Before I let go of it all to the sky, before I'd say I'm afraid of eternity without you, before the waters were rebuked and we were calm, before the earth was replenished with warm rain, before being torn between wanting to change and not wanting to hurt you. Before the spiritual hydraulic lifted me from danger, before my left eye, left breast, left ankle fell off, before my heart was left beating on the sidewalk, before I disappointed everyone I ever knew, before I tried to make everyone in the world happy. We danced the slow dance together with "Good Night, Sweetheart" coming from the speakers, and time and events do not burn this away. Well, my dears, I'm afraid that was a little less successful than last week. Clearly, we had a couple of glitches I need to work out. In the meantime, thank you for your patience. Thank you for checking in. Remember that all of our ebooks, or as many as we've been able to do, are on sale right now from Squire Publishing. We've got lots of bundles of wonderful sales from our site. You can go to allensquirepublishing.com and check them out. And we're also doing lots of these sorts of videos. Yesterday, we posted a virtual reading by Elizabeth Hazen, Dora Malik, and Steve Leva. Beautiful poetry reading that should have happened live, but we've got it on our site. Jimmy Patterson is broadcasting every Monday at 4 from this very room, though on a different side of the table, and I'll be with you every Wednesday at 4 as well. I just want to say before I say goodbye that I think one of the things all these poems by Linda and Grace have in common today is that their keys to survival seem to be keep your heart soft and your mind sharp, and treasure the gifts of your imagination. Soft heart, sharp mind, big imagination. Let's get through this. We'll meet up again on the other side. Thanks for listening.